What about a local tie with O.J. Simpson here in Kansas City? I reached out to Frank Boal yesterday, of course, longtime sportscaster in this town, and I said, Frank, what do you got for me? And he sent me a nice, lengthy text. I said, we got to get that thing on the air. Here he is, Frank Boal, needs no introduction. Hey, Frank, good morning.
How are you, my friend? What's up?
I'm doing well. How are you? And, what have you been thinking about here these last 24 hours? O.J. Simpson, of course, dying a couple of days ago, and you got a great tie here to Kansas City I got to share with the audience.
Yeah, right. Everybody remembers the slow speed chase, and I think, a couple things went into factor. I mean, every lawyer will tell you if you're going to have a jury trial, you have no idea what a jury's going to do. Okay, I mean, there's just no way. And Johnny Cochran was absolutely brilliant. His defense was brilliant. And, of course, Chris Darden and Marcia, they made a tremendous mistake there at the end of the trial, which we all know about by now. But the Kansas City connection is this. O.J. was in Kansas City. Okay, now remember during the trial, part of the evidence was a footprint from a Bruno Magli shoe, right? It's a loafer of some kind, very expensive loafer. And he was in Kansas City covering a Chiefs game. He was on the Monday Night Football crew. So he's in Kansas City covering the game. And there's a picture that they used in the trial of O.J. on the sidelines at Arrowhead in a pair of Bruno Magli shoes, even though O.J. said he never owned a pair of Bruno Magli shoes. So that was part of the evidence train that the prosecution had against O.J. and just, one more thing that pointed to his guilt. And they did have an overwhelming amount of evidence against him, but I think their arrogance caught up with them. And the atmosphere when they changed the venue was, I think, everything pointed in the fact that O.J. was going to have a chance to get off with the crime.
So, though, was it perceived and assumed at the time that the shoes, the Bruno Magli shoes that he had on here on the sidelines at Arrowhead, were the shoes he had on the night of the murders?
That was what they hinted at. Okay, he said he never owned a pair of Bruno Magli shoes. Here he is in Bruno Magli shoes. Okay, you see what I mean? So
Gotcha.
O.J.'s lying, all right, and this is just one more piece of evidence, and it very well could have been that pair of Bruno Magli shoes. In fact, I think that's what they sort of indicated as they were, trying the case. Some of it's fuzzy to me now because it happened such a long time ago, but it's just one of those things that they just had so much evidence against him, but I think they got arrogant and they just they blew it. They blew the case. Obviously, then you have the civil trial and it goes against him. He's found guilty on everything at that point.
What was it like here in town when it came to media coverage in Kansas City? Obviously, we were in Ground Zero, but gosh, I mean, that was obviously the trial of the century. What was it like here in town?
It was amazing. John Holt, who's still the anchor at Fox 4 now. Okay, at that time I think we're still NBC affiliate at that time, I think. And they every night they went on the air and they did a whole, I think it was at least a half hour, maybe longer, of trial coverage. They had lawyers in every night. John's a lawyer as well as being a journalist. So they did a tremendous job covering the trial. And it went on and on and on, and John had to bring those people in every night and had to sit down with them, and they did a Q&A, and they talked about the evidence that day, and, how do you feel today about his guilt or innocence, and what would you do if you were a lawyer and you're in this situation? So it was huge. It was absolutely huge. It was a trial of the century, and it gathered everybody's attention all across the United States because he was O.J. Simpson. He's this Pro Football Hall of Famer and one of the greatest running backs of all time. And, just he was a broadcaster. He had the Hertz cars, and the whole thing. It was just it was huge. It was huge.
Frank Boal on KCMO Talk Radio. Did you ever cross paths either as a player or interacting with him while he was doing the broadcasting gig, and maybe they were stopping by Arrowhead or anything of that nature?
No, I never talked to OJ. I never met him. I knew he was in the stadium the same time I was, but he was, I'd never crossed paths with him. Marcus Allen, of course, who became a Chief after his Raider days, he was one of his best friends. He was sort of not implicated in it, but knowing, and he knew Nicole Brown Simpson and the whole routine. So he was one of OJ's best friends. And then, Marcus obviously played with the Kansas City Chiefs. So that generated, part of the hype for it as well. The fact that Marcus was here, he knew OJ, and then OJ played in the NFL, and the whole routine. So they just tied everything together.
Did Marcus ever talk about it? Did you guys ever ask him about it with the media? How did he handle that at the time?
No, he was done by that time. So the deal was, we never. Not to my recollection did he ever talk to us about OJ, and I'm not sure he ever talked to anybody about OJ
Gotcha.
At that point.
Okay, Frank Boal is on
because he was his friend.
Yeah. No, I understand. I see what you're saying. Frank Boal on KCMO Talk Radio. Well, that is great stuff. So when you think back to that time, and you've been thinking about it, I'm sure, the last 24 hours, anything else just stick out to you, Frank, as you look back to what was obviously one of the most memorable, things to happen in modern American history, that trial, the white Bronco, and everything else?
Yeah, the slow speed chase. And I don't know if you remember this or not, if you watch video of the slow speed chase, every overpass, because that's what they used to do in L.A. They'd put all the chases up on TV. They'd break into program and go, hey, we got a chase out on the I-5. We got this guy, this panel truck is running this deal. And they would do all that. Well, here comes OJ with the slow speed chase. Every overpass had people on it, as OJ and Al Collins, who was driving at the time, his buddy from USC, that there were hundreds of people on every overpass. And you're wondering, where are they parking? What are they doing? And they'd already had signs, go OJ, go. It was like, it was absolutely crazy. It was so bizarre, really bizarre.
Frank Boal, great stuff. Thank you, Frank. We so appreciate the time this morning, my friend.
Oh, anytime, Mundo. You know that.
You bet. That is Frank Boal on KCMO Talk Radio.